Peace and love, black families. The Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson, live and direct from South Africa. The reason I'm doing this video at 4 o'clock in the morning here in South Africa is because I cannot fall asleep. And I can tell you why I can't fall asleep. The reason I can't fall asleep is because I was on YouTube watching all of my old classic favorite videos. Mesmerized with Ja Rule and Ashanti, Tank I Deserve, My Jagged Edges, my Mariah Carey, We Belong Together, Mariah Carey, Always Be My Baby. I just been Mary J. Blige. So when you start watching, your favorite videos and your adrenaline start pumping because music exerts a very significant effect on our consciousness and unconsciousness. So I'm watching all my favorite videos and now they got me amped and I can't sleep, but I am going to try to go to sleep after I do this short video. Shout out to the good people at the Apartheid Museum. Got a chance to go to the Apartheid Museum today for a third time. Always learn something new. They had a special exhibit on Nelson Mandela. They had learned some new things about him. And then we went on over to the Hector Peterson Museum, learned some new things there as well. What was so interesting at the Hector Peterson Museum was the brother who escorted us there was actually present on June 16th, 1976, during that fateful day when our young brother Hector Peterson and others were murdered by the racist apartheid police. So he was actually there walking with his girlfriend. He was not supposed to be a part of the protest, but he happened to have been there at the time it happened. So he was able to give Sister Nafisa and myself an entirely new or different or independent or special assessment and impression and interpretation of what happened on that day. So that was powerful because I had not yet met anyone who had actually been in Soweto on June 16th, 1976. So that was powerful. So shout out to Bob and Kenneth. We really appreciated that. So tomorrow I'm going to be speaking in South Africa. I think I got the information here. Where am I going to be at tomorrow? Tomorrow, Tuesday, October 4th, the Prince of Pan-Africanism will be speaking at the Saul Sotetsi. I hope I'm saying this right. Forgive me, brothers and sisters in South Africa. The Saul Sotetsi Sports Center in Sebokeng, Zone 14, 5 to 9 tomorrow. So again, that's the Saul Sotetsi Sports Center, Sebokeng, Zone 14, from 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock tomorrow. If anyone has any questions about the event, I don't know if it's free or not. I don't know. I just come and do what I do. But the phone number, you can contact Empress Ima at 072-872-5778, 072-872-5778. But if there is a fee there, please pay it because we do have to travel. We have to fly to Cape Town. We have to fly to Durban. We have to fly to the Eastern Cape. And so we will need some funds to take care of some of that stuff. As you guys know, Dr. Umar Johnson is here free of charge because that's how I roll when I come to Africa. Okay, so there's no fee for service here, but we do need some liquid cash to cover some of the expenses associated with the journey, not only for myself, but for the entire host team. I just cut the beard because I ain't had nothing to do. When you cut your own hair, you get in the bathroom and you just start doing stuff, and the next thing you know, the beard came off. I think it was okay to take a break from the beard. I'm going to grow my beard back, though, because I don't like shaving all the time. So I'm going to grow my beard back. So this is just a nice little break from the monotony of the bearded prince. This is some South African ginger beer, and this is the bomb. This South African ginger beer is the bomb. Okay. Shout out to Nigeria. You and Ghana will see me in January, God willing. We're working on a Ghana Nigeria tour. Okay, so let's deal with the subject matter. I recently been getting emails and questions from parents as it relates to whether or not their child can be compelled, forced to recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States flag. The answer is no. No child in public or charter school, and mostly no child in parochial or private or independent school can be forced to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. This goes back to the 1940s. First of all, the Pledge of Allegiance assumed its modern form in 1892. 1892. Okay, so this is the era right after Reconstruction, which is that period in American history that follows the Civil War. So 1892, we get the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. In 1942, in the early 1940s, between 1942 and 1945, the Pledge of Allegiance was finally accepted by the United States Congress. So even though it was created in 1892, you do not get congressional approval of the pledge until the 1940s. 1942, I believe the year was exact. And Congress didn't even start referring to the pledge as the Pledge of Allegiance until around 1945. Okay? Now, the words under God were not an original part of the Pledge of Allegiance. The words under God were not inserted into the Pledge of Allegiance until 1954, which is the same year that the Supreme Court ruled in the Brown versus Board of Education case that race could no longer be used as a factor in public school. Okay, so that's just some history. Now, believe it or not, you can thank the Jehovah Witnesses for why your child doesn't have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, the Jehovah Witnesses have a lot to do with why children in America cannot be forced to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Let me tell you what happened. It started in 1940 in my home state of Pennsylvania. Okay, Minersville, Pennsylvania School District. Okay, it was the Minersville, Pennsylvania School District, all right, versus the Gobitis family, I believe it was, Gobitis. So the school district in Minersville, Pennsylvania, forced a Jehovah Witness child to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And the Jehovah Witnesses went crazy. They said, we don't pledge no flags and none of that. So the Jehovah Witnesses sued all the way up to the Supreme Court in 1940. And guess what happened? The Supreme Court upheld the Minersville School District decision. The Supreme Court held in 1940 that schools could force students to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes. So if your child was in public school during 1940, or if any of you were in public school around 1940, you'll know that there was a couple of years from 1940 until 1943 where schools could force students to recite the Pledge of Allegiance because the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, ruled in Minersville versus Gobitis that yes, children could be compelled to recite the pledge. But guess what? The Jehovah Witnesses did not give up. They did not stop there. 3 years later, in 1943, the Jehovah Witnesses go back to court again. They go back to court again. This time, it is the West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. The West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. Same situation. Same situation. Once again, forcing the child to say the Pledge of Allegiance. This time, the Supreme Court would rule differently. This time, the Supreme Court would rule that the First Amendment to the United States Constitution gives citizens, and children are citizens, it gives them the right not to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, because the First Amendment has a freedom of speech clause. And when you recite the Pledge of Allegiance, that's a form of speech. And so the First Amendment maintains that you cannot force someone's speech. If someone does not want to recite or pledge, you cannot force them, because that is a First Amendment freedom of speech clause protection. Okay? In addition to that, in the Constitution, you have the words under God. So added to the free speech clause is also the clause within the First Amendment that says that you cannot force anyone to respect any establishment of religion. So you got the free speech clause, and then you have the religious clause that protects children from having to say the pledge if they do not want to do it. So the Supreme Court ruled that children in the United States of America cannot be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance, nor can they be singled out for not saying the pledge, nor can they be forced to stand during the pledge. Okay? Now, I stand, okay? Not because I respect that flag, because I don't, but I can respect certain people who, for whatever reason, may respect it. Okay? So I will stand, but I don't have a problem with people who don't stand. You understand? Okay, that's a decision you have to make with your children. But Dr. Umar Johnson is of the position that no African child in the United States of America should be pledging the United States flag. I am very serious. No African child in the United States of America should be pledging the flag. If your child is pledging the flag, I would like to know why. This is the flag of slavery. This is the flag of Jim Crow. This is the flag that condoned the killing of Trayvon Martin. This is the flag that condoned the killing of Sandra Bland. This is the flag that condoned the beating of Rodney King. This is the flag that condoned the murder of Freddie Gray and Eric Garner and Philando Castile and Alton Sterling and all the Tamir Rice. This is the flag that's condoning the murder of our brother in Charlotte. This is the flag that condoned the lynchings. Thousands of black men and women lynched, castrated. Black women had their stomachs cut open and the unborn fetus trampled upon. And you're going to tell your African son or daughter to go to school, stand up, and put their hand on their heart? I cannot support that. I cannot support that. As you guys know, a couple years ago, I started a movement where I encourage African parents, do not let your child pledge the flag. If you want them to stand, they can stand. If you want them to stay seated, they can stay seated. But no African child should be pledging that flag. If nothing else, this is a silent protest. Shout out to Colin Kaepernick, by the way, my brother. We riding with you, Colin Kaepernick. Stay strong. We got your back. But if nothing else, this is a silent protest. This is a silent protest that our children can get involved in. A silent protest that our children can get involved in to show solidarity with our brothers and sisters and solidarity for our ancestors in respect for our God. Not the God of the United States flag, but for our God. Okay? I agree with you, brother. Africans are not citizens, which is all the more reason why we should not be pledging the flag. Okay? In fact, I'm going to do some research on Pennsylvania cases involving the Pledge of Allegiance, because your brother, Dr. Umar Johnson, might be listed in the case law in Pennsylvania under the Pledge of Allegiance. Let me tell you why. For those of you who know my history, you know I attended the Scotland School for Veterans Children in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Chambersburg, Pennsylvania is the town where the grandfather of Pan-Africanism, Martin Delany, was raised. And of course, I visited his gravesite for the first time on my way to Kentucky State a couple weeks ago. It's also the city where Frederick Douglass met John Brown before the 1859 Harper's Ferry raid in West Virginia. So it's a very significant, small little Pennsylvania city. Well, I attended the Scotland School for Veterans Children, which was a para or semi-quasi-residential military institution based on military protocol. So we drilled with weapons and we went to summer camp down North Carolina, Fort Bragg, okay? So even though it was quasi-military, it was publicly funded. The Scotland School for Veterans Children was publicly funded. We did not have to pay to attend. So one day I'm sitting in auto shop with Mr. Ott, who was the white auto shop teacher. Peace to him. And everybody stands up to recite the pledge. And I believe I stood also, but I did not pledge. And he asked me several times, Umar Johnson, on your feet, we're pledging the flag. And I believe he was a war veteran. I said, I don't pledge the flag. He asked me again. I said, I don't pledge the flag. So guess what happened? I got sent to the superintendent's office, okay? They were going to suspend me, and they were going to bring me up on expulsion charges. They were going to kick Umar Johnson out of the Scotland School for Veterans Children. And let me clarify, at that time, okay, as a 13, 14-year-old, at that time, I was not pledging the flag for Pan-African reasons. It wasn't about being unapologetically African primarily. My father, we were raised Muslim, Sunni Orthodox Muslim. As you know, Philadelphia has more American African Sunni Orthodox Muslims than any city in the United States. So I was raised Muslim. So my father did not allow us to pledge the flag because within Islam, you don't pledge the flag. You don't pledge to anything except God, right? So we didn't pledge the flag. So the superintendent contacted the Department of Veteran Affairs, and they contacted the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and I believe they also contacted the United States Department of Education, as well as attorneys for the school. And the superintendent came back and told the auto teacher, as well as myself, that I could not be made to say the pledge, nor could I be expelled or suspended for not saying the pledge, because it was a First Amendment constitutional right, and that the school was publicly funded. So you cannot force a child at a publicly funded school to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. But on top of that, even if the school wasn't publicly funded, it would have even been difficult for a private school to force a child to recite the pledge, because you have a constitutional right. You have a constitutional right to remain silent during the Pledge of Allegiance. No one can force you to speak on something you don't want to speak on. Okay? No one can force you to utter the words under God. So, if any of you are dealing with this situation, remember, we just had a case on the news. I don't know if you guys saw it about a week or two ago. Did you see the case where the boy, the African African brother, refused to stand up for the pledge? And his teacher went over to his desk and tried to yank him out of the desk. Did y'all see that? Tried to yank him out of the desk. I spoke with another mother a couple days ago, good friend of mine. Her daughter refused to stand, and she was interrogated by her teacher. Now, y'all need to understand that this law also protects your child from being harassed. They cannot be harassed. They cannot be questioned. They cannot be bullied by the teacher or the principal. So what should you do? Your child. And by the way, y'all need to talk to y'all children. Don't just say, don't pledge the flag. Teach them why they're not pledging the flag. We got to educate our children. Make sure they understand why this family does not pledge the flag. Our family does not pledge the flag for these reasons. Make sure they're educated. So if they are asked, they can give an intelligent answer. But, but, because the school does not have the right to question your child, because the school does not have the right to question your child, you could simply tell your child to respond by saying, you can ask my mother. You can ask my father. My mother and my father said if you have any questions about why I am not pledging this flag, I have their phone number and you can call them up right now. But I am not to have a conversation with you about why I do not pledge the flag. That is a conversation that you can have with my mother and father. Did y'all hear that? So y'all could teach them how to answer it, which wouldn't be bad practice. I'm not against that. But if you really want to shut them down, simply tell them that if they ask you any questions, tell them to ask your mother and father. Okay? Now, if they try to make your child say the pledge or harass your child, you should follow up with a letter. You should follow up with a letter. And what should your letter say? Your letter should say, Dear Principal so-and-so, I am the parent of student so-and-so. My child informed me that during the Pledge of Allegiance yesterday, she chose not to participate. And as a result, she was yelled at, she was singled out, she was harassed, she was disrespected in front of her classmates. I want to make you aware of the fact that my child has a constitutional right, a First Amendment right, to not have to participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Supreme Court has ruled in 1943, West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, that no child can be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance. This is fair warning that better never happen to my child again. If it does, I will be suing you for discriminating against my child's constitutional rights. And I will contact the media, my U.S. reps, my U.S. senators. I will contact President Obama, even though I know he ain't going to do nothing about it, but I'm going to contact the Attorney General's office. I'm going to contact the American Civil Liberties Organization, and you, Principal so-and-so, will be fired. And the teacher who harassed my child will also be fired. My child will never, ever be singled out again for exercising his or her constitutional right to choose not to pledge the flag. Nor do I want you asking my child any questions, because it is a right. And when you have a right to do something, you don't have to explain yourself. When you have a right to do something, you don't have to explain yourself. You have any more questions, you come and talk to me. You all have a nice evening. Signed, respectively, Miss So-and-so. Carbon copy, Superintendent of the School Board. Carbon copy, Chair of the local school board. Carbon copy, the Mayor of the city. Carbon copy, State Secretary of Education. Carbon copy, U.S. Senator. Carbon copy, U.S. Representative. And you send a copy of your letter to all of the elected officials that I just named, because their job is to uphold the law, and your child's so-called constitutional rights was violated. Okay? The case was West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. That was the case. Both the 1940 case, where the Supreme Court upheld the right to force kids, and then 1943, also Jehovah's Witness case, where the Supreme Court finally overturned their earlier decision and said you can't force schools to make a child say the pledge. But you know what's interesting about this before I sign out? It should have been black people, not Jehovah's Witnesses. It should have been black people, not Jehovah's Witnesses. It should have been black people, not Jehovah's Witnesses, who fought for their kids not to have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. But because we so scared of white folks, and we so loyal to America, and slavery is over and we need to get over it, black folks will never fight for nothing like that, because we are too interested in being loved by white folks. Okay? So on that note, brothers and sisters, I just wanted to cover that. I'll see you guys in a couple hours anyway, because I'm going to do my Tuesday morning Black Parent teleconference. I'm going to do it on Facebook Live. We're still going to be on the telephone. You still call in and ask your questions, but I'll do it on Facebook Live for the benefit of other parents who might be struggling with the same situation. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. All right, so I'm trying to get some sleep now, but I just wanted y'all to be armed to deal with this Pledge of Allegiance situation, because it's going to keep on coming up. And the reason it's going to keep on coming up, because teachers don't know the law, principals don't know the law, counselors don't know the law, athletic coaches don't know the law. They can't make your child say the pledge at the football game or the basketball game. So I just need to make sure y'all knew the law. Now, the law ain't going to save us. It's just a strategy we use, okay? I'm not on no Moorish thing where I think we're going to free black people with paperwork. That's not me. Shout out to my Moorish brothers and sisters. I love y'all to death, but that's just an area where we're not going to agree. No white paperwork is going to save black folks. You're going to save yourself through your own organizational endeavor. Okay, not law, power. Not law, power. Not law, power. Okay, so peace and love, black family, and I'll see y'all at 6 a.m. Eastern time, 12 noon Johannesburg time, for the Black Parent Teleconference. Peace and love.